Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker with Firestorm. Today we're going to be talking about creating an intelligence network. We're thankful to RenWeb, who is our partner and co-host of this Crisis Coach webinar series. And we will have scheduled next month part 2 of this series where we're talking about virtual investigation. We invite you to become our friend on Facebook, Firestorm Solutions. You can follow us on Twitter, Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage the risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind, the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and the work product presented today must be read in conjunction with your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret the comments or the information as legal advice or legal opinion. Firestorm is delighted to have RenWeb as our host and co-sponsor of this Crisis Coach webinar series. Building an intelligent network is our topic today. Karen Mazzullo, Executive Vice President of Firestorm, will be making the presentation. RenWeb is what you need in a student identification system. And we're pleased that they have this information here for us. RenWeb is preparing for their annual conference in San Antonio, so I hope that you're aware of that and you've been invited and you're planning to attend. Our presenter is Karen Mazzullo. She's the Chief Intelligence Officer of Firestorm. Karen, over to you, please.
Thanks so much, Bill, and thank you to RenWeb. Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be here with you today. Thank you for joining. We are looking forward next week to seeing all our RenWeb friends in San Antonio, and if you get an opportunity, look for Jim Satterfield. Look for the Firestorm booth, say hi, get whatever our little freebie is that we have at the booth. But we're really looking forward to a great conference and seeing all of our friends from and at RenWeb. During the presentation, if you'd like to ask a question, we may not be able to get to questions by the end of the session, but Bill will forward those questions to me, and I will make sure to answer them and put them in the webinar brief that will be available on our website in our brief section. And also there will be a link to the YouTube recording on our YouTube channel. So within about 48 hours, you should be able to access both the brief and the recording if you'd like to share with other people on your team. Today we're going to talk about building an intelligence network and what that means. And to start off that conversation, we really have to think about, how do you know what you don't know? You know, we know what we know. I know how to do monitoring and predictive intelligence leveraging social and traditional media. I know I don't know how to speak Chinese. But there's a whole world of other information out there that we don't know. And so today, what I'd like to do is help bridge the gap just a little bit on helping you find new ways to surface information that you don't know about, that you never knew existed, that may impact your school or your environment. You know, Firestorm has identified 5 common failures in a crisis. The first is to control critical supply chains. The second is training employees for both work and home. The fourth is to conduct exercises and update your plan. And the fifth is the failure to develop a crisis communications plan at all. The third one is what we're focused on today, and that is the failure to identify and monitor all threats and risks. You know, most people, when I ask them, whether it's a company or an organization, a school, are you monitoring now? They'll say yes. And when I dig a little deeper and find out what that means, it's 2 things. One is they have Google Alerts set up, or maybe they use a free tool, Social Mention, or something like that, and they can pick up 1 or 2 things that are said specifically when they're looking for their school name, their brand name, their product name. The second group has a team that is dedicated to marketing, the university, the school programs. Marketing and investigative research are very different things. Marketing is looking for opportunities, people talking about wanting to participate in a school program, people wanting to take adult education classes or to further their degrees. Looking for risk is very different, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We asked you a question when you registered for the session. Do you currently use external intelligence to identify potential threats? 30% of you said yes, 30% of you said, well, I don't know, and 37% of you said, no, we don't. So we really want to look at the 67% and say, can we help you make this a better reality for your organization without the need to add a full-time or a couple of full-time employees? Is there a more efficient, a better way to go about that? Now, we know that certain types of crises or incidents have very distinct advanced warning signals. I live on the coast, on the East Coast, in South Carolina, and we're very conscious of the weather because we're in a hurricane state. And so we know way ahead of time that something's coming. As a matter of fact, Firestorm prior to Hurricane Sandy, a week and a half prior, held a couple of webinars to help you prepare, because weather has become so sophisticated, we can let you know that far ahead of time the likely landing spot and how you can prepare. Sadly, there are other instances that have no warning periods or very subtle warning signs that go unnoticed. As I mentioned, I live in Charleston, and sadly we had a horrific tragedy occur here just recently, and it was quite frankly just shocking. But as more information came out about the incident, we found that the statistics on an event such as this held true. And the statistics are that 80% of the time, one person was told or knew that something might happen. 67% of the time, 2 or more people have been made aware or know something might happen. And in this case, that was true. The alleged shooter, even though he's confessed, he's an alleged shooter, did tell 2 people. They even hid the gun from him because they thought he may pose a real threat. And sadly, they did not tell anyone. And what happens then in a crisis situation, and given this situation, is that learning happens in panic mode, and we never want that to happen. We want learning to happen in a calm and prepared way so that it becomes mind and muscle memory, so that in a panic situation, people can resort to their practiced plans. We think that is one of the most valuable things you can give to your teams, those persons on your campus, and your community. Now, before we jump into the overall what and where and why of predictive intelligence monitoring, we're going to take a really quick look at emerging technologies. You can use a tool that monitors for one social media application, but we really don't want you to have to use 30 different tools to monitor all of the different places that you might be mentioned. Then add in social news and traditional media, and it really becomes an overwhelming task. So the first thing is that we use 2 very powerful tools in combination with our experienced intelligence analysts. But one of the things that we must do is keep abreast of new and emerging technologies so that we can work with the creators of the tools that we use to add these technologies as they can to what we're looking at. Last year when we did a similar session, I talked about Yik Yak, I talked about Kik, I talked about WhatsApp, and a few others that were new and emerging and now are rapid adoption. Everybody's using them. So I want to introduce you to a few others. Today we have Destructs. Destruct says that any message, photo, or file shared privately on social media can be uploaded without the fear of having it remain with the recipient or on the internet permanently. They say with a push of a button you can just destroy everything that you've had out there. Well, we know that's not true. We know that all I have to do is take a screenshot of it, and before you know it, I can have it all over the web, especially if I make sure Ariana Grande or someone else with 9 million followers gets a hold of it. So while it's good in theory, I'm not really, I'm not buying it. But you need to know it's out there, and you need to know that there are going to be people in your organization who will be shocked when they've sent out things that are questionable and somehow they didn't get destroyed as they thought they were. So teaching your folks about these emerging technologies is important as well. Yo's been around for a while, and when it first started, it was just a silly little application where you could send somebody a yo if you wanted to. And it has gone on from there to be more of a content marketing tool, and you can send video and you can send voice and all kinds of other things. You still say yo while you're doing it, but it really is growing, and it's something to pay attention to and keep your eye on, because in addition to people hurting themselves in traditional social media, now we have other new social media tools where they'll have the opportunity to do that as well. And you need to be concerned with how they're interacting with your brand. Culture Sphere. Culture Sphere is interesting. It posts itself as the world's first social sharing platform for employee-inspired media. And it's a way where you can share internally with your peers. They say they're letting employees utilize a social platform they're familiar with on the consumer side and unleashing it within the confines of an enterprise setting. And that concerns me and maybe some of you on the call, because if you have people sharing something internally, which you already do, you need to have your IT teams involved. You need to make sure that things can't be then shared externally. If someone shares something internally that they think is positively safe, no one external to the company will ever see that, well, how about all those emails we read every day that are leaked from companies and organizations and campuses that we're never supposed to see our eyes? So I'm not really convinced that's going to work either. Then there's Hyper. Hyper allows you very quickly to text anybody a link to their phone, to their smart device, and isn't that great for people who send malware in a link? Now I'm just going to receive something on my phone. I'm going to say, oh, this is from someone I know, and I'm going to click on it and let the malware fairies loose on my computer. So I really would like to see people take a lot more caution when something like this comes across their desk. And we've seen Meerkat and Periscope, Shots, which is a lot like Snapchat, says it destroys the image, but we know that even though it may actually do it from their server, again, that doesn't keep me from taking a screenshot of it, even though they say if you can't, I can use a snapping tool or a snipping tool. And there's Rounds. Rounds has free group video, voice, and text chat. All of these things are great, but as we're using them for productivity, someone else is going to be using them for malintent. And this is what I really wanted to show you. This is called YouNow, and some of you may be familiar with YouNow. YouNow is very popular with the mid-teen, late-teen set, and that is very disturbing to me. You can broadcast yourself from your room with all of your personal effects, maybe a big poster with your address on it, and he actually says in this post where to mail him things. Now, it is a P.O. box, but I do know now that he lives in Colorado Springs. I can narrow down his zip code. That's nerve-wracking to me. If he's got his geo-coding turned on, I can probably pinpoint right where he is. But more important, when people are broadcasting, there's a chat box to the right of the broadcast where people can type in, hey, stand on your head, hey, do this, do that. And these dares become, or these suggestions become increasingly disturbing depending on the person who's broadcasting. I saw one where a 13-year-old girl was broadcasting, and people started coaching her or encouraging her to do very suggestive things, and it was really disturbing. So I would love for those of you, whether you're at the university level or the secondary school level, to talk to your students this year when they come back, talk to parents, and keep your eye on something like this. Additionally, when I saw a few of the different broadcasts, there were a lot of personal effects around the room that gave me a ton of information that will easily allow me to catfish or to reel in a naive person by citing personal effects, knowing the name of their dog. And so it's more than just things we can find out on Facebook now. It's more insidious because we're looking at you live, and I just find that very disturbing. So in order to understand what's going on with these different sorts of technologies and how they can affect your campus, your employees, your students, I want to talk a little bit about monitoring in general. And Bill, I'd like to just do a really quick sound check. I heard a little click, and I just want to make sure if you can give me an affirmative. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Karen.
You can? Oh, that's great. Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate that. Okay, so the first thing we do when we set up an intelligence network is we set a baseline. What you're looking at here is an image of a campus. This is a client that Firestorm works with, and we have their campus buildings, we have their football field, their baseball field, and it's a pretty large area, their parking lot. And the first thing we need to do is be able to look at the broad view of what is the larger conversation about that's ongoing in this specific geographic region, in this specific age group. So we set a baseline. We see a lot of kids posting on Instagram. They're posting really fun pictures of dance recitals and funny things that they do. And then we're able to look at how and where people discuss the things they discuss. And we're able to then start looking at more disturbing comments or comments that may indicate behaviors of concern that signal a threat to your school, or if we have any businesses on the call, or your school is a business. This was one that we picked up that I just thought was a really great example for you. Last night after we dropped Brenda off at work, we went through her drive-thru, got food, and I told her to hit the blunt. So this is happening either really close to or on campus. We don't know if it's about a student, and then we would look a little bit more deeply. But if that was happening on school grounds, we certainly would want to be able to see that. Now, what we're showing you here with this map are those students who have geolocation turned on their devices. So not only are we able to look at a geo level, but we're able to look at a a conversational level and gather this chaotic group of conversations, and through crafting keywords and keyword phrases and working with you to identify where you feel the greatest risks are, we can start identifying deviations to the norm and then understanding the context. Last year a song came out, and part of the lyrics of the song were going to take a gun to school and shoot, or something along those lines. And it wasn't a very popular band, but the song went viral. And for a couple of months during the period that song was released, we were getting way off the standard deviations of normal conversation where it had to do with gun, and we were able to get very quickly that not risk, but rather these were song quotes, and we were able to put it into context. However, there are times when we know that something is just, we're looking at the person, we're looking at their circle of influence, and we see someone post something going to kill someone at work. That raises some flags and requires a little bit more due diligence and investigation on our part. We also have the ability to set risk meters for certain words or phrases. I have risk meters set for bomb, for fire, bomb. And it helps me and my team help you and your team when you're monitoring for more than marketing purposes, but for risk. We have to remember, those of you with large campuses, small campuses, you have study, you have employees, you have teachers, you have visitors, you have other people on your property. And we have to remember what is protected speech. There are off-duty conduct laws that you must be aware of. There are protections for political views. There are protections for whistleblowers posted on social media. And there are concerted activity protections, which protect people when they want to discuss either face-to-face or on social media, posting about low wages, poor benefits, difficulty with a manager, long work hours. Those are all protected. So again, when we do and work with you on a thorough risk and threat assessment, part of that is looking at your plans and your policies, and if you've included what is protected in those plans and policies. But people will continue to say the darndest things on social media. In this case, we had a young woman who had a series of posts leading up to this interview she was having, and she went on the interview and she got back and she said, "Ooh, I start this blanking job tomorrow, thumbs down." And she thought everything was cool and she was funny until the person who had hired her said, "And no, you don't start that expletive job today. I just fired you. Good luck with your no money, no job life." Now, we got a couple problems here. We have a young person who posted something they certainly shouldn't have and wasn't very appropriate. But then we have this small pizza shop owner who posts something that technically he shouldn't have either. And what he did not realize was the viral nature of the post that he made. He's since removed it. I believe he may have closed his account. I'm sorry, I can't recall on this one. But what he didn't realize, if you'll look underneath his message, it shows 3,832 retweets or reshares and 4,324 favorites, just like a like in Facebook. And that was early in the day. I didn't even catch it later on in the day. So this thing took off like wildfire. It was suddenly on major media, had picked it up. It was very embarrassing. And so you have to be careful not to avoid doing something that Firestorm talks about quite often, which is don't let your first response become the secondary crisis. And that's another reason we're here to help you with your predictive intelligence. When you see something that you realize is either a threat or a risk or negative toward your business, we'd also like to coach you in how you respond to that, because we want to keep you from putting yourselves and your facilities and campuses at risk. Something our president says quite often, Jim Satterfield, is social media is not random, it's targeted. If it was random, people really would just talk in their heads. But the reason we post things on social media is really to put some eyes on it. And usually it's about something or someone. Now, this was a case that happened about, I think it's been 3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. I was doing some due diligence for another client, and this popped up in my stream. And what I do then is take the next step, and I put it into context. And I say, okay, is this person just not been able to get tickets to a concert they want to go to and they're just letting off steam? Is this one of those, oh, everybody's bringing a water gun for senior day? But putting it into context, I saw some things that alarmed me, and I felt I needed to elevate it to the next level. Well, this is an anonymous account. There was no personal information on this account per se. So it wasn't like I had a name or I had a location. But what I was able to do was go to my secondary tool that allows me to pinpoint a person of interest and their circle of influence. And I was able to quickly ascertain by looking at their circle of influence that they most likely lived in a very specific town in a very specific city. And once I looked at the middle of that circle of influence, there was one high school that it most likely was. And they had referenced a high school in other posts by just the initials of the high school, the initials being EG. And so I was able to be fairly assured. So I wrote to the leadership of the school. I said, I don't know if this is a real threat or not, but I can't let something like this go by without bringing it to your attention. And very shortly thereafter, this post that says, I'm taking my gun to school, the person posted this. I think I'm going to be expelled because there was a bullet found in my locker and a clip found in my room. And then FML, and for those who aren't familiar with FML, write me at kmasulu@firestorm.com and I will explain it to you. Now, this isn't a situation, I don't want to see students being expelled, but I certainly don't want to see a school coming into the property under any circumstances for any reason. And at Firestorm, we practice predict, plan, perform. And we really believe over the 4 years that we have been refining this process that we are getting to the point where we can truly help you not predict every single thing that ever happens. We don't have a crystal ball. We have something better, though. We have a good, solid scientific method using data that exists publicly today. We aggregate it, we analyze it, we put it into context, and we're able to deliver to you when we see something that we feel may be a likely threat. Now, we know where people are talking. When they know something, they're going to talk about it, and they talk on social media. This is just an example of something that happened yesterday in the sort of, gee, they should have known better category. I really want you to pay attention to what messaging you're putting out as well. But Paula Dean's website on her Twitter account showed this particular image of her posing as Lucy with her son in brown face. And it turned out this was an image from 2011 from a Halloween special. But the first thing they did, usually people say, oh, my account was hacked. Okay, well, they weren't able to do that here. So what they did instead was they threw their poor social media manager under the bus and they fired that person. I think if we just plan things out a little bit better, maybe this kind of thing wouldn't happen. But also, let's say the social media manager did have came through a block of pictures and thought this looks like fun and posted it. We've got to be training people in our organizations. You cannot just give someone the keys to the car without ever giving them a lesson and expect them to know how to drive. There are so many cases in front of more judges than we'd like to think, even when it comes down to who owns a social media account. There's a blog article going up on the Firestorm website for this week about a case where a gentleman spent 7 weeks in jail for contempt because he refused to turn over the passwords to the social media accounts, 2 of which he claims are his personal accounts, which technically they are. But he used them for business, and because he used them for business and had very large followings, the court ruled that they should be turned over to the new owners of the business in the bankruptcy proceedings as assets. Well, that's law we all need to pay attention to and be aware of, because words matter and intent matters. And the intent of those accounts was to develop business. We've been watching something that happened yesterday as well, and you're looking at the graphic representation of it. If you look down into the green area where the words are, this is a conversation map. This is part of one of the tools we have that quickly lets us know what the conversation is about. The conversation is about a raid, the FBI, and child pornography. These are 3 words you never want associated with your school, your campus, or your brand. In a very short period of time, I was watching this for less than 20 minutes. It went from an average of about 50,000 impressions per day to more than 8.5 million, and it was still climbing. And this was on Jared Fogle in Subway. So we can see how quickly something escalates, and if we're out in front of it, if we can start managing the messaging, if we can have written policies and procedures of what happens when a crisis does occur, we might be able to keep this at a reasonable level and change that conversation map. Subway did come out and say that they are very concerned and will be monitoring the situation, and they don't have more details at this point. And that was appropriate because they didn't have more details. It's an evolving situation. They did, however, remove every mention of Jared from their website of the Jared Foundation, and both parties say they have amicably split ways. So it's a bit of a tragedy for everyone. You know, when we're talking about these things, you'll hear me say quite often that context matters because the social conversation is very complex. It involves the very semantics of speech, syntax, idiom, and it changes from there are colloquialisms used in one part of the country and not another. The way someone refers to a marijuana cigarette in Florida may be different than how they refer to it in North Dakota. The word fleek may mean, really great in California, and it may mean a pound of drugs in another part of the country. So we need to have that context as well. And this is an example of a group, there was a group of kids that were using a very specific hashtag in Kentucky before they went what in my day and age we called wilding, where a group of kids sort of mobbed through the streets and damaged businesses or campuses and were a little bit very much out of control. So in this one, what he's saying here is there were 100 of them, the 100 deep in the streets, and we flocking, and they were flocking or mobbing, and he had a gun, and he had 50 in the gun. So it's important to have people who understand as best we can what the context is, and also we're learning every day. Now, the other piece of this next, then, is your policy in place and enforceable? Because as we're listening to these complex patterns of conversation, they may be happening within your organization. They may be coming out of your building today. Do you have a policy in place, and is it enforceable in order to deal with that? Well, this is the United States Army, and this is someone who actually is a chaplain's assistant. And she was posting really offensive things during her workday, very racial, very racist comments, and no one was spared her wrath, it would seem. And at one point, she said, "Hey, I'm a squared-away soldier in real life. Good luck coming to my chain of command about some Twitter expletive. Promise they're going to laugh." Well, they didn't laugh. I can guarantee you that the Army has a policy and procedure in place for this type of activity. But the Army didn't find this first. A watchdog group that was monitoring found it first. So this lets you know that monitoring can be very powerful, but also very damaging in the wrong hands. So you need to be in control of your accounts, your messaging, and your employees, your students. Well, you can't be completely in control, I know that, but we want you to be ahead of the ball game. Now, then, once you've got this whole broad conversation that's ongoing, can you then look at it on a geographic level? Can I look, and I've showed you when we first came in, or shown you, when we first came into the application, we can look from a bird's eye view at a building, a group of buildings, an entire town. You just need to let us know, and we'll help you structure what that looks like. And we see the impact after doing broad listening on specific people or geographies because we are looking. So this is one where somebody posted something about somebody hitting the blunt via a drive-through window. Now, the thing about this one that I wanted to show you is this isn't just a picture. This is actually a Vine video, and it was kind of quiet. This one person put this little Vine video up, and then somebody saw it and thought it was very funny, and the thing went pretty viral. Now, if you'll look, it's blurred out right now, but that person's name tag is on their uniform with the name of the restaurant. And I can tell you that the restaurant was not very pleased to see this, but they're not alone. You can look all day long through social media, and you will see, for some reason, more people leaning out of windows, takeout windows, and hitting the blunts. Or the marijuana cigarettes, as we might call them. So you don't have until tomorrow to react, because what's going on social media today, it's in your organization already. It's already going on. So you don't have any kind of window to sit back and relax and say, I wonder what we should do about this. So we need to look at these behaviors of concern, whether it's violence or drugs. In these situations, I've looked at instances where I felt that there were some real threats and wanted to bring it to either the employer's attention and also to your attention today. I kind of want to bring my gun to work signs sometimes. Let every dirty blankety blank in here have it. That's a threat. That's a risk. We need to look at that more deeply. I was not feeling safe at work. This guy was bringing a revolver to work in his bag, and I was afraid he was going to shoot me. That's my story. That's pretty frightening. We want them talking to us. We want them coming to us and not going out on social media. So this guy told me he was going to kill me at work today. Great. We're finding this on Twitter and Facebook. So when we see these broad conversations, that's what we do. We look a little bit more deeply. Now, one of the tools that we have even will search emojis and put them into context. There's actually a restaurant in New York right now where I think that I read the entire menu was emoji. So if you don't know emoji, you will not be able to get a cheeseburger today. But in this case, our application said to me, warning, there's a risk here, because there's an image of a police officer and an image of a gun, and it says this looks like a risk. So we're one of the few, if not the only companies that leverages a tool that can also index and read emoji. Now we're going to look at an escalating issue right now. That was another one I found on behalf of one of our clients. And we work with businesses and school districts. At the district level, we may be looking at a number of schools and a number of streams, or we may go ahead and look at the whole city or town, depending on how large a population it may be. But this began with someone who was stressed. They had to go off on a white guy today at work. Okay, that was a little bit, I wonder what's going on there. And a few days later, when I get off work, I have road rage. A few days later, I barely talk to anyone anymore. So we have growing stress, growing rage, and isolationism. But then he starts saying, but I'm quietly making moves on big things to come. People I once loved want me to fail and dead. They want me dead, but actions speak. I'm a one-man army. Some days I may be ready to go to war. Those are red flags, certainly. But what was different about this is maybe once a day he would tweet in the past, or a few times a day while he was at work. On this day, at this count, there were 49 tweets on December 1st, but actually as the day ended, I didn't capture the rest of them. There were actually 57. That's a lot. Plus, it's during his work day. He's on work property. And we start seeing more and more stress. Every day is stressful for me. Stress going up. No respect for a liar. No conversation for a hater. No loyalty for a fake. And if you'll look at this picture, I have to cover some of this information because there's some very specific information. But underneath this one message, there are about 70 tweets. And what we can do when we see this little tweet bird here, these are public messages going out from his account with geolocation turned on, and we could actually follow him through the building as he went from one area of this building to another area. The person who was stressing him actually was passed at one point, and he made comment about that. When we say put things in context, is something song lyrics. This piece that he posted, no beef with nobody, chillin', might have a couple of, etc. That's a common meme. He didn't come up with that. That's something that we see quite often. When somebody's really feeling stressful or wants to fight or feels like they have to be defending themselves. And we certainly did work with the employer, notify the employer, and intervene. But when we really start to see stress go higher was during a period where one of the messages that he sent was, these white folks at blank are beginning to bug expletive out of me, for real, for real. And after this, there was the threat of violence and the threat of a weapon, and there was the ability for the employer to intervene, because again, we saw behaviors of concern, not a formal behavioral risk threat assessment, which we also do. This is just a higher level intelligence monitoring behaviors of concern identification. We can do this on the campus, again, in a business facility, both. Now, the other thing that's important when you have an objective intelligence analyst is that we also want to avoid apophenia, the experience of finding lots and lots of disparate data and making connections in this sort of random or meaningless data. We're not going to do that as well. So we look at things, we put them into context, we check, we double check, and prepare for you the kind of information you need so that you can truly take action when it's needed. So in summary of this part, to create an intelligence network, we listen. We create conversation aggregators and identify what's being communicated either on your campus or in your facilities or buildings utilizing streams, phrases, and words. And then when we look more deeply at a specific person, a location, or an event, or a group of people that may be involved in a specific event. Because we know if we can do this for you, time is purchased on your behalf. We buy you time when it matters most. And we help you follow best practices, help you with your written plans, and then to create the intelligence network. Because intelligence is critical to decisions in a crisis. Most executives are trained to make decisions, or leadership is trained to make decisions based upon information in a crisis that, honestly, most information right up off the bat is wrong. Data is not available. Policies don't exist. I'm going to skip over this one image. I want to get to the next one for you because I think this was a really great example. As you're thinking through internal messaging during a crisis. Again, I live in Charleston, and we had, there was a bomb warning on campus, and our campus for the College of Charleston is right down in the middle of downtown with shops and businesses all around it. And through their alert system, they incorrectly said a bomb has been found on campus, and it really caused stress, and it was a bad day for everyone involved. But what happened next was a little bit worse, was because the College of Charleston's president said, well, it was a problem with the technology. It was not a problem with the technology. It was a problem with the messaging, how it went out, and how the aftermath of that messaging was handled. And this went quite broad with a great deal of criticism on the president of the college. And for those of you at universities, it's the last thing you want is your college president or your senior leadership or administration blindsided. All of this should have been worked out ahead of time, practiced, planned, message maps should have been ready. It was really handled poorly. The value in a program of predictive intelligence is in identifying pre-crisis indicators. We want to help you find the crisis before it happens, whether it's someone that's threatening, it's an external risk or threat, or an internal risk or threat through lack of preparation. Additionally, where do people go when there's a crisis or an alert in your facility or at your facility? Without doubt, almost every experience of the last 5 years I've seen with a bomb threat or a shooting or an act of violence on a college or high school campus, people have gone to the facility's website, and the website has crashed within seconds, and no one can find information. During a crisis is not the time to create your Twitter account so you can get messaging out or receive messaging from local police departments, fire departments, and those who are first responders there to help you. So how do you know? And we can tell you through a solid predictive intelligence program where people are coming from and how they're finding you. We want you to predict, plan, perform. And so because of RenWeb, thank you RenWeb, they've arranged for, if you'd like to receive a no-fee self-assessment and analysis, it's normally a $2,500 value, if you'll please mention RenWeb, either via the contact form on our website or in an email to webinars@firestorm.com. We will make sure that that's available to you. Additionally, at the end of this session, within about 48 hours, as I mentioned, there will be a brief and a recording of this call. We'd love to help you in your efforts to predict, plan, and perform your next crisis, and I'd love to help you through predictive, actionable intelligence. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, webinars@firestorm.com. I'll see the email. You can go to our website, read more, and use our contact form if you have any other questions. Or certainly you can call us. You might get to speak to the handsome Mr. Bill Baker at 1-800-321-2219. Appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. I'll review your questions and include them in the brief. And Bill, if there's nothing else, I think this will conclude our call for today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.